Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode. And today we have a return guest. And unfortunately, it's been way too long since he's been on. But Ariel Weindling is here to join us. He is the founder of Not Me, which was way before anybody was talking about this the way he was talking about it. It is whistleblowers reporting, speak up in depth. So, Ariel, first of all, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you, Tom.
So we reconnected at Compliance Week 2025, recently held in DC, and he was telling me about some of the great innovations, strategies, and tactics his company has come up with. So I asked if he'd come back, and he said, sure. So could you remind our audience of your professional background before you founded the company?
Sure. As you can hear from my accent, I grew up in France. I moved to America when I was 22 years old to go to law school. I went to Boston University Law School. I became a lawyer in California back in 2004. And I started to practice law as an employment lawyer, advising HR leaders and compliance leaders on employment law related issues. I practiced law at Littler Mendelssohn, which is the largest law firm in the US devoted exclusively to the practice of employment law. And I also then practiced at a law firm in Los Angeles called Mitchell Silverberg, where I was a partner until I decided to create a speak up solution, a whistleblower solution, to really help employees come forward and speak up and help employers or organizations do a better job in listening and resolving issues before they escalate.
I don't know if it's your Gallic heritage, you're just tuned this way, but anyone listening to this podcast will quickly find that Ariel speaks his mind. And if he sees something that he thinks needs to be talked about, he will do it. And one of the things he has done that is, and frankly, he has challenged me to say, are we really talking about speaking up? Are we really just ticking a box? Are we just creating something for auditors? So, Ariel, I wanted to use that background to open up why you see a lot of hotlines, internal reporting, anonymous reporting, companies that claim a speak up culture really fall short of that because they're really just doing something they think the regulators want them to do or their auditors want them to do.
That's a really good question. I think, Tom, the reason I see with a very distinct eye what companies are doing when it comes to whistleblowing or speak up is because I spent so many years advising HR and compliance leader when it came to their employees and any types of misconduct. So I really know how a company is addressing those type of issues generally. And I have a very critical eye because I noticed over my career that things were repeating themselves. Things that did not need to happen were always reoccurring. And I think one of the reasons why we see things happening all over again is because the processes that exist at many organizations don't really work. I think a lot of speak up solution or whistleblowing solution are designed really to help the company please the auditors or the regulators.
We've had a whistleblower law in this country at least since 2002 when Sarbanes-Oxley came in. That was changed slightly with Dodd-Frank. So we have national laws requiring whistleblower or reporting systems in place for U.S. public companies. Many companies have instituted them as best practices. Some see it as a way to protect themselves, but also give employees a chance to step forward. If you were advising a company who was starting a program, how would you start to have them think through the issue of what's a hotline, what's a whistleblower, what's a speak up, and what's really the best way you have seen for a company to utilize those strategies and tactics?
So it's a multi-pronged questions. I'm going to try to answer the question I remember. So first, if I would advise a company on how to start a compliance program, I would steer away from the word compliance. I will really not try to address it from the compliance angle. The goal would be to deliver compliance because ultimately organizations and companies must be compliant. So the goal is always compliance. But the way to get to compliance is not by speaking the legalese, by speaking the compliance lingo. Compliance, when it comes at least to whistleblowing or speak up, has to come from the employee side. When a company decides to implement a training program, a payroll process, benefits, any type of thing that they want to give their employees, they can pretty much decide what they're going to give, who the provider is going to be, and employees have really no choice but to follow the instruction of their employers. When it comes to speak up, it's very different because the speak up process has to initiate or has to start with the employee or the individual that is either the witness of the misconduct or the victim of the misconduct. There is nothing a company can do to get that person to come forward unless that person is willing to do so. The first thing I would advise is what are the goals? What do we want to accomplish? Do we really want our employees to trust us and to come forward when they need to speak up? Do we want to crowdsource compliance? Do we want our employees to work together with us on establishing culture of safety for everyone, or we just want to have a process or a program that is designed for the auditors or for the regulators that's in place like any or most organizations do have. And I think that's a clear question that needs to be asked at the get-go, because based on what the answer will be from the organization, I would either recommend our tool, our solution, which is really good for speaker, for building trust and culture, or I would turn the company towards another solution that is not designed the way our solution has been designed. So I think first question is, what do you want to accomplish?
So now let me ask you to turn your hat just a little bit to look at a company with a currently existing hotline, anonymous reporting, alleged culture of speak up. And what are some of the signs you would see that they are doing it simply for their auditors or to meet regulatory requirements or a true desire to have this system in place?
One of the signs would be really how many reports do they get the past 12 months. It's really a good sign. A lot of companies believe that because they have very low reports, it's very good, nothing is happening. I don't think it's really true. I think that the number of reports you get, especially if it's low, it doesn't mean that the company is safe and that employees feel safe at this organization. It might feel that the employees do not trust the processes and the system in place, and that's why the company or the compliance team does not hear about more reports. So I would first look at what happened over the past 12 months. I would look also at the surveys that the company has sent and to try to identify the type of gaps in the data that they are receiving, because what the survey says might be telling into the level of trust and safety that the employees might feel at the companies. I would also look at how often does the compliance team or the HR team, it depends who is in charge of the hotline, how often do they communicate with the employees about the hotline? I would then also look at the number of investigations that they've conducted over the years when there's a need for a fair, prompt, and speedy investigation. And I would look at the resolution of the investigation. I would look at the timing of the time it took to close the investigation. And I would also start by interviewing the people that have reported issues that are still employed at the company to kind of have a sense of how they felt about the entire process. And I will ask them, did you feel that you were safe? Did you feel that you could trust the process? And that's where I think I would start with a mini audit.
I interviewed someone else recently along on a topic along these lines, and they gave the example I think we've all heard. All we get on our hotline is people complaining about rotten food in the refrigerator or something along those lines. And the person I was interviewing said, if you get a report about unclean dishes or rotten food in the refrigerator, someone has taken the time, trouble, and effort to communicate that. And that you should, as the chief compliance officer, go down yourself personally to see what's the situation in our kitchen. And the point they were trying to make is if someone inputs information, however that may be, whether it's a hotline, whether it's to their supervisor, whether it's calling the chief compliance officer, your responsibility as the intake person, is to take it seriously, no matter what you may or may not think of the allegation. Is that a fair assessment in your perspective?
Yes, but I do not think it's not something that I think would happen with a tool like Not Me. Like we've collected over 20,000 reports since I created the company 6+ years ago. I've never seen an employee report stupid thing like that. Meaning like we'd never have seen a report where an employee would complain about someone stole my food in the kitchen or the dishes that wasn't clean. I've never seen that. And I think there's a big misconception because I pitch many companies very often, almost every day. And I think there is a misconception or a gap maybe between what some people at companies believe employees will do if you trust them with a powerful tool to speak up. A lot of people will think that employees will not report important things. And I think it's not true because we never see that, at least with not me, we never see that. I think if you empower your employees to speak up, if you give them a trusted tool, they will behave like adults and they will not report stupid things or what we would call trivial things. So I've never seen that over 20 plus thousand reports. I've never seen an employee speak up about these kind of issues. And I would add also that what you could do if you are concerned about an employee reporting trivial thing is to leverage your hotline or your speak up tools to allow employees to report not only things that you want them to report to you, but things that really matter to them. I think one of the key things that we need to flip a little bit and change in our approach to speak up is it's not so much about the reporting, it's also a lot about the listening. It's really a give and take. It's a dance that you have to go through if you want to build trust, if you want your employees to report, you have to dance with them. So you have to listen to them. So there's a way to leverage your speak up line or your outline to get your employees to ask you questions, to give feedback, to maybe give kudos, or to maybe suggest ideas for the business as well. Why would you wait for your employees to only come forward to you when there's an issue that might create a risk for the organization? Don't do that. Show them you want to listen and get them to participate actively into creating a culture of safety for everyone.
The listen up part of that, how important, I've almost come to think that the listen up is equally important to the speak up, although you may have a different view. How important in your mind is the listen up part of all of this?
I agree with you, Tom. I think it's fundamental. I think it's as important as the speaker part. It really goes together. It goes hand in hand. You can't have speak up if you don't have listen up, and you can't have listen up if you don't have speak up. So I think you're right. It's super important.
You also mentioned a couple of other things a little bit earlier, and one was time to resolution or timely resolution. And I'd like to unpack that a little bit. After the report comes in and someone has actually listened, they have to make a decision or what I would call triage. How do you help train companies to make that triage step or decide what route to take? How important is that in your not me process?
So our technology does it for the client, for the organization. We will do the triaging based on what has been reported. So some reports will go automatically to HR, some reports will go to compliance. It will depend on the type of behaviors or risks that are being mentioned in the report or the allegation. So the triaging can be done automatically by the technology. So that's very easy. I think another important thing that we want to try to do with our solution is to speed up the process and make it more efficient. For both the employees, we want to deliver the best speak up experience to your employees. It includes safety, trust, but also UI, UX. It has to be a very smooth and easy process for your employees. And we want to give the compliance team or the HR team a very easy, straightforward process for them to do the investigation. Not every issue that is being mentioned or reported needs to take 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 2 months to get resolved. Oftentimes, you can resolve things very easily, and which people can do fairly quickly with our technology. And the goal is really if we want to have better speak up, we need to democratize it. If we want to democratize it, we need to make it more simple for people. It cannot be that formal. A lot of organizations still do like a very formal process. I think it's organization where the chief compliance officer or the people in charge of risk mitigation and risk management, I will say, are above 50 years old. But in many organizations where the risk mitigation team, the compliance team is a bit younger, people understand that more speak up is better and we don't need to be that formal. And I think deformalizing the processes is key in improving your culture and safety in an organization.
about the role of, you called it the dance, but I want to expand that a little bit to how do you keep a reporter, a whistleblower, someone who speaks up engaged in the process so that if the result is not what they wanted, they accept the process because it's fair and just?
There's a few ways you can do that. One of the questions generally we ask in our intake form before the reporter or the employee submits the report is, what do you desire? What outcome do you expect or desire out of this report? It's very important for our clients to ask that question, because if they know the state of mind or the expectation of the reporter, they kind of know how to resolve the issues because they tell you from the get-go what they expect. Oftentimes, and I think it's in one of the stats that I can give you, 95% of reporters want to be safe and want the behavior to stop. That's the main thing they want really when they report, the behavior to stop. So if from the get-go, from the outset, you know what they want, it's easier also to steer your investigation toward the outcome that they expect. I think what people want really when they speak up is to know that they are safe and that the process is fair and fairly speedy, meaning it won't take weeks for them to hear back from someone. They know that the process across the organization is the same for everyone, so everybody will be treated equally and fairly. And they understand that the outcome is not up to them. They understand that ultimately the HR team or the compliance team will look into the issues. There will be an investigation. They will collect evidence. They will collect testimonies, and they will come up with a determination. I think people are less interested by the outcome itself than by the process. If the process is fair, speedy, and timely, they will accept the outcome. And you have to communicate with them. You have to keep them updated on the changes of status when you get your report, when it's open, when it's being under reviewed, when it's resolved. You have to keep them in the loop, I think, and appraise them of the status of their reports.
Let's turn to retaliation because that is a huge fear of employees. Where do you think we are on either stopping or even preventing retaliation, or is it still an ongoing problem? And here I want to draw upon your experience at Not Me and the reports you've seen and the companies you've worked with. Is it still an ongoing problem?
It's not an issue at the company that use Not Me, because our technology is able to trace and track retaliation somehow. And also our clients remind their employees that use Not Me to come forward and report retaliation if they experience it. So it's part of the training that they undergo too. So employees are a bit more sophisticated to report retaliation if it's happening, just to let the company handle it. Because remember, when companies put Not Me in place, they really tell their employees that it's really a partnership. They want to give them a powerful tool to speak up, but they have to work with us or with them. It's part of the process. But I think retaliation is still happening quite a lot at many organizations. And I've advised a lot of companies that do not want to work with Not Me for various reasons on how to limit the risk of retaliation. And a lot of people agree that having a really clear report from an employee with clear allegation, clear indication, and conducting the investigation kind of limits the tendency for a manager to want to retaliate, because it's a very natural tendency for a person that has been reported by an employee to want to retaliate. You're a manager at a company, you work with someone, you think that they like you, that you have a great relationship. Somehow one day you come into the office and they have accused you of misconduct. And then you want to, of course, retaliate against them, because we are human beings and it's part of nature to want to nix them. But if you have a clear report and if you can monitor what's going on, you can resolve the issues and you can remind the manager accused not to retaliate and keep an eye on it, you can manage and mitigate those risks.
How about the role of leadership in the creation of a speak up culture? How do you counsel senior executives above the CCO level who may understand it? But what's the role of senior leadership in all this, Ariel?
It's very important. It really starts from the top. So I work with a few CEOs. I've worked with a few CEOs. I work with a few board members also, or members of audit committees, on how to do that. But it's really, you can create a speak up culture if you don't have the C-suite involved or the CEO. You can't.
What about the role of, or rather, innovation? What does innovation look like in this space? I mentioned that we've had a law in place since at least 2002, updated in 2011 or 2010 with Dodd-Frank. Do we have innovation in the speak up space, or is it just common sense?
I think we have had some innovation in terms of the technology being used. We went from having, when I started practicing law in 2005, the most advanced thing or technological thing that companies were doing was putting together like a hotline, like 800 numbers where employees could call in and report something. I think we've had progress from a tech standpoint because now we can have apps for reporting. We have data and analytics. We are using AI also to see what's going on. So there is a technological progress. But to me, it's really not about the technology. I think what needs to be changed, and again, my approach or my philosophy on Speak Up is not for all organization. I'm aware of that and I completely accept it. But my approach delivers true results if you want Speak Up. So I think the progress that needs to happen is really on flipping the approach, the overall approach to Speak Up, what it means for an organization to really want Speak Up. How do we get employees to come forward? How do we take down barriers to reporting and Speak Up? And how do we listen better? And that's where the progress really needs to happen. The technology is just a tool to reach those goals, but it's not really the goal or the focus.
One of the reasons I was excited to visit with you now is you literally have had over 1,000 reports come in through Not Me. And I was wondering if you might share with us some of the key findings or insights, even from these reports, and where you think we might be here in May 2025.
Yeah, sure. So just to correct something you've said, we have had over 20,000 reports through the platform.
Ah,
What I said I would share with you is the last 1,000 reports that we collected over the past few months, or yeah, I don't know exactly what's the time frame. I will share the data that we got from the last 1,000 reports. Some of the data, I won't share everything. And I'm happy to do that. If people want to get our full data and analytics on 1,000 reports, they can contact me privately and I'll be happy to share those directly with them. Ask me away. I have a bunch of data that I can share with you. For example, do you know, Tom, what is the day that is the best, the day that employees prefer to submit a report? Do you have any idea?
that's one of the questions I wanted to ask because someone of my age might be comfortable with one mechanism or one communication tool, and someone my daughter's age, who's 25, might use a very different tool. So I'm very intrigued by the method of communication of a speak up.
Okay. So the most pickup that is done through the Not Me platform is done through an app, a mobile app or a web app. So it's very convenient for employees. Your daughter would love it because it's easy and safe for her to use. But we see that most of the reports, so the day that is the preferred day for employees to submit a report is always Friday. Most of the time, you get more report on Fridays before the weekend than on any other days. Over the last 1,000 reports that we received through the Not Me platform, we noticed that 58% of the reports were anonymous. So it means that a lot of the reports, it's almost 50-50, not exactly, but almost half of the reports were submitted by the employees with their name, which is pretty good because if an employee comes forward with their name, it kind of indicates that they trust the organization. They're not shielding themselves behind the anonymity. 23% of reports are against manager, meaning that our managers are doing a good job generally because they are accused not too often. Most of the reports are among employees, but not against supervisors. I can tell you the nature of the reported misconduct. I can tell you that among the top 5, the broader categories of what's reported, retaliation comes at number 2. So it's still very present. But verbal things like bad jokes or inappropriate comments or something that is said to another employee is the number 1 type of misconduct that will be reported. And it's 3 times more than number 2, which is retaliation. Financial misconduct is still very high in the ranking. So we see a lot of still fraud, corruption, bribery being reported. And health and safety concerns also are reported very often through the platform. When it comes to protected categories, the number one protected class that is mentioned in the reporting, if someone believes that they are the victim of something based on one of their belonging to a protected class, gender still comes number one, meaning women are reporting more than men, because we cover also sexual harassment and discrimination also. So it happens, gender is the number one protected class that is being reported when it's mentioned. Age comes at number two. Race is number three. We see a lot of reports mentioning mental health, which is indicative of the fact that a lot of employees in the workplace are struggling with their mental health. And then number five, we see sexual orientation being mentioned also.
Ariel, do you have a sense from the data you've looked at of where the system may break down for a company, meaning that either it's not resolved quickly enough, there's lack of communication, there's insufficient attention to the triage? Is there something that might guide us, places we might pressure test our own speak up?
I think I'm not 200% sure of that. It's something I've been thinking about and something I've seen. I think there's a break in the system or a risk when an employee comes forward directly to a supervisor or manager, and somehow the report is not routed to the right person in compliance or in HR. Meaning, oftentimes people will report to a coworker maybe or to their supervisor, which is a good thing, but somehow the report doesn't make it through a database or to a central place where it can be monitored and followed up by someone else. And that's the risk really that we see, which is good. I like when their employees go to their supervisors, but there's always a risk in that point.
Ariel, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode. But before we leave, I wanted to ask if any of our listeners wanted to connect with you, contact you, find out any more. You've already made a gracious offer to privately share some of the findings you've talked about generally here on this podcast. If someone would contact you or find out more about the company and the services you offer, what would be the best place or places for them to go?
They can contact me on LinkedIn. I'm Ariel Weindling on LinkedIn. You can find me, or you can email me. It's the easiest way. My email address is Ariel, Ariel, at not-me.com. Ariel at notme.com. not-me.com. And anyone should take a look at what we do on our website, not-me.com.
Ariel, I will promise I will not wait 5 years or more again before I have you back. This has been great. It was great to see you at Compliance Week. Thank you for coming up and speaking to me, and we will continue this conversation.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Compliance Podcast Network. Start your mornings with daily compliance news, quick, sharp updates on the top compliance and ethics stories in under 5 minutes every morning in Compliance Podcast Network. Because compliance never sleeps. Need practical advice fast? Check out Compliance Tip of the Day. One actionable idea to level up your program. Short and sweet, every day on Compliance Podcast Network. Got 10 minutes? We've got the week's top 10 stories. 10 for 10 brings you the big compliance headlines. Fast, fun, and focused. Every Saturday on Compliance Podcast Network. And don't miss the Sunday Book Review, where compliance meets culture through must-read books and big ideas every Sunday in Compliance Podcast Network. Whether you're in the office, on a walk, or commuting, stay smart, stay ethical, stay tuned. Only on the Compliance Podcast Network. Available wherever you listen to podcasts.